So when I was 18, I made the conscious decision to take a year off after high school, not go to university. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Accidentally got a business mentor. And that's where I sort of walked into this world of leadership, sales, studied a bit of finance, and actually started getting a lot more curious around how do you make money work for you, not just you work for money. So in early stage, I would always say it's fate over fact. You can be more liberal and you can try more things, but you need to back your faith.
So, where do you think, or when do you think you first became intentional about building wealth as you define it?
That's a great question. I don't know until you've probably just asked that question. This is me giving myself time to find an answer. I reckon there were two major stances at that. So when I was 18, I made the conscious decision to take a year off after high school and not go to university, because the way I looked at university was that would be a great place to go to learn. Like if I wanted to be a lawyer, I would need a law degree, or if I wanted to be a doctor, I should get a medical degree. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. My father was a self-made entrepreneur, business person. And I didn't really know that was going to be my path. But at the time, I sort of journeyed out, and I accidentally got a business mentor.
Accidentally?
Yeah, I wasn't looking for one. He appointed me as mentee. And that's where I sort of walked into this world of leadership, sales, but where they were all quite wealthy. In hindsight now, they were quite cash wealthy, so they would spend a lot of money, eat very well, and were quite flashy with that. So that sort of opened the eyes to, hard work can pay off. And it really introduced me to this concept of business holistically. But I was extraordinarily young. I didn't learn finance, so I learned a lot about sales, I learned a lot about leadership, learned a little bit about sales, marketing and strategy. It probably wasn't until 10 years ago when I started Point 16 and started to actually look at wealth quite differently. I studied a bit of finance and actually started getting a lot more curious around how do you make money work for you, not just you work for money. And so, yeah, I suppose there were two layers to that.
Two catalysts.
Yeah, very much so. I think working hard, but also understanding holistically how business works, was a very, very good starting ground for me and something that I really appreciate. But without going into my life journey, I had two businesses that did okay, like made good profit, but didn't sort of break through what I now call growth cliffs. Okay. So I grew them very quickly. We hit a revenue line, and it didn't matter how much effort or work I kept putting in, I couldn't break through this revenue cliff or revenue ceiling. And it happened twice, same number, same amount of time, different businesses, yeah. And so I remember getting to a point, it must have been 2006, and I said, I need to learn about things I don't know. And so it was either going to be go work in a big business or go to university. And that second business was on the university. So it was a thing called Student Card. So I'd already done my 4 years at uni. I just never went to a lecture or sat an exam, kind of an average university experience. Yeah. But then, and so I ended up at Lion, which was called Lion Nathan at the time, very large alcohol distributor. And that really gave me what I would consider now my finishing school. So I learned a lot about small business, learned a lot about large business. And I started Point 16 on a whim because I knew I wanted my next thing I wanted to start my own business, but I didn't know what to do. So I became a business coach or a business consultant, and in the early stages of Point 16, I would just work for whoever would want me. And so that was working with a lot of small businesses and helping them grow demand side and supply side, but then also working with corporates and helping them be a lot more innovative, and got on this wave of corporate venturing. All while trying to look for the business that I was going to create, and be inspired by all these dozens of companies. And 10 years later, that is the company.
You woke up one day and you're like, actually, I've already done this. I'm doing it.
Yeah, that wasn't too long ago. It took a lot longer than I thought it would.
Yeah. 10 years is always seems to be a time frame that kind of comes. 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
Think of Kami recently. That was like 11 years in the making, maybe more. Crazy.
Yeah.
My friend Carl built Letterboxd. I don't know if you know Letterboxd.
I don't know.
It's the largest movie social network in the world.
Oh wow!
And they're on High Street.
Yep.
So and they just had a partial exit earlier this year. And to Carl, he's had a few exits this year, and he's had many more over the last couple of years. He's on an absolute tear. He's on a tear, and he's probably, in my opinion, he's the greatest entrepreneur that no one knows of, because he's also the best technologist I know.
Awesome.
But
I love those stories.
Yeah. And no one knows about him. And he was in the New York Times for this exit, but no media in New Zealand.
Oh, wow.
Even though no funding, self-funded through their business Cactus Lab, which you may have heard of.
Yep.
And then, awesome. But like you say, it takes a decade.
Yeah, I've always heard that, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. And the 10-year thing, I knew, like at the start of the year, I knew, this is the 10-year, and then you completely forget about it.
Yeah.
And the team reminded me on the anniversary date, and then they did a big surprise party. It was actually really, really lovely. But waiting for that overnight success bit.
Yeah. That catalyst moment, right? Yeah. It's all about those step functions up, I find, or down sometimes.
Yeah.
We have to recalibrate.
I also think you do need to take those moments of just stopping and reflecting and acknowledging. Because I think, to me, I'm always thinking about, right, where's that next quarter? Where's that next year? Where's that next 5-year horizon? But I suppose hitting 10, you sort of reflect back and you think, oh, yeah, okay, we have done some stuff and, we have made an impact.
Yes.
So what were some of the challenges that you came up against when you first started Point 16? You can remember back 10 years ago.
I can remember the office. He was a young, innocent man. I suppose the first major challenges, there were two that I can recall now. So one was knowing that revenue was going to come in, because it was week to week or month to month. And not that I did it on purpose, but I did kind of look for those, retainer clients, so I could focus on, spend a lot more attention on work and quality and strategy rather than paying bills and all the rest of it. I think the other big challenge was defining what I did or what we did. I think when we were starting, and any startup could probably allude to this, is you just want to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You just want to, right, we can do that. There's a lot of idealism. You want to survive. You want, or you've got these goals or dreams of being really big. And to me, there's, so we talk a lot at Point 16 around business stages, and growth cliffs are actually part of our mantra now. But, there is a stage where you just say yes to everything. You'll take every meeting. You'll take every piece of advice. You will try everything at the start. And I think at the time I thought I was helping myself. And I think I probably could have shortened those first 3 or 4 years. Or maybe I needed those 3 or 4 years. But, to actually go, look, if I had learned that I need to say no to this stuff and no to that stuff and yes to this, that would have been something that would have accelerated success a bit faster. But I think it's probably a come-of-age story for all business owners or all business leaders is, what defines your business is what you say yes to, and then you get to a point, and then it's you define your business by what you say no to or who you say no to. If there's a specific supplier or specific customer or specific staff member.
How did you pull yourself back then? So if you're saying yes to everything, what was it that kind of made you go, actually, this is not what we want to be, this is not what we want to do. How did you make that choice or make that change?
I made it probably about 2 years after I came to acceptance, about 2 years after I made it.
Okay.
It was a rebrand.
Yeah.
So it was now no longer, I was no longer a sole trader. I now had a team of two, and we wanted to do a rebrand. And I think the rebranding process of forcing us, what do you stand for? Why do you exist? And I was like, I'm just here to make business awesome. Like, I'll say yes because I can do everything.
Yeah.
I'm amazing. And they just, the branding agency we used doesn't exist now, but they were amazing people who just said, no, we're not going to believe you on that. We're not going to accept that as an answer. And it really forced me to sort of come up with something. And as soon as I realised we do growth, we help people grow their business, and we do it in very specific ways. And as soon as I suppose we started to define that, that helped other people self-select whether or not they should work with us.
Yeah, because coaching's kind of a newish thing in New Zealand. Like 20 years ago, probably wasn't here. 15 years ago,
For sure.
wasn't here. So at that 10-year mark, because from what you've been saying, coaching's part of what you do. So how did you pitch that? Like a concept that's not known by many, to sell yourself?
Yeah, it took me a while because what I would typically do is find out what they want and just regurgitate their words back to them. And then, right, if they wanted a coach, I would say that. If they wanted strategy, I'd say, yeah, we could deliver your strategy. Or Eric Schmidt, who's the CEO of Google, actually said, and I've borrowed his words, was the best athletes on the planet have a coach. The best actors on the planet have a coach. The best musicians on the planet have a coach. And if you want to be one of the best business people, why would you expect to not have a coach to do that? And, a coach can give different perspectives. It can come in with different IP or different lines of sight. You're still the one doing it. You're still the expert business person. You're still receiving the profit. The accolades, but to be coachless, and I've actually embraced that. I remember when we had I've got a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, so very, very close in age, and I think how do we get these guys to sleep? How do we get them to eat well? Like, if we don't have the answer, there must be people who know way more about this. So being able to lean in and getting parent coaches, and it could be for a short period of time, but so that's how I've leaned into it. But that's how I would describe coaching now. I wasn't as articulate then.
Okay. So what's Point 16 doing today?
Point 16 does a few things, and it's all geared around sustainable and easy business growth. So, and we do that in a number of ways. So we work with companies that have growth goals, and we work with them by defining a strategy on how they can achieve that. And then, so once the strategy is done, then we may optionally help them by advising or doing with them on how to live that strategy. We have a private equity arm called the Sustainable Lifestyle Fund. And that came about because we had a lot of clients who wanted to retire. And we knew the businesses well. And one of the partners at the time of Point 16 said, why don't we buy the businesses that we coach or that we work with? So we started SLF in 2019, and we bought 4 businesses then. And all SME, very regional, extremely, we call it unsexy businesses. We bought 3 in the first quarter of 2020, which I would not recommend to anybody, especially because they were regional and not cloud-based. So we focus a lot with those businesses, and we help them provide sustainable work and effort for shareholders, for staff, and for their customers and suppliers. So very purpose, people, profit focused. We do some corporate work, so we'll do corporate venturing, where we help large businesses innovate, create new revenue streams. And one of those was a couple of large banks. So we learned a lot about open banking, a lot about neobanking, especially in New Zealand. And so 6 months ago, we started our venture capital arm. So Point 16 partnered with Icehouse Ventures and created the New Zealand Fintech Fund. So it's a very early stage fintech solely in New Zealand with a New Zealand bias, and we've made our first 7 investments. And so now our focus is actually working with those companies and helping them navigate regulation, doing the right thing for the customer, doing the right thing for their business.
So it's not just injecting money and then and just watching. You're quite heavily involved.
No, we're very active.
Yeah.
Capital, I think, is easy. Like, money's abundant, money's everywhere. And if you really want it and you're able to adapt, you will find it. We don't do spray and walk away. We're not. And I know there are a lot of companies that do, and that's their remit. Our thing is we might do a lower check size, but we will be very active. And I think part of our investment committee thesis is to make a decision as to should we invest in this company or not, comes with how can we help them.
Yeah.
So Point 16, we help 3 ways. We can offer capital, we can offer connection, and we can offer capability.
Yeah.
And so whenever we're making a capital decision, a lot of the questions that we ask ourselves are, can we give our connections and our capability that will give this company an unfair advantage? And if we don't have that capability or we don't have those connections, we will pass on the capital part.
And what are the capabilities that you believe you guys are the best in class at?
For fintech?
Yeah, I guess for fintech.
So in the VC community in New Zealand, the VC community is actually very good. It does get a bad rap, some bad actors, but they've done very well supporting the local scene. However, there has been until recently a very similar approach. Find the founder who's tinkering, or founders that are tinkering away in their garage, give them enough money to prove product market fit here in New Zealand, scale globally, 100x return, happy days. Fintech is very different in that regard, and it's very, very hard to do that because every territory has a very unique regulation set. And while VC and largely private equity is in the macro finance world, understanding how finance companies can generate an income, so basically how a bank's balance sheet works or how a bank makes money, is rarely known, even by bankers. And so we know both of those things. So we understand the New Zealand regulatory market. We understand the unit economics here in New Zealand as well. And because we've studied a lot around open banking, we've been involved in quite a few things, open banking and neobanking, I suppose that gives us a unique ability to see something very early and have a lot more confidence as to whether or not this thing could do well. Because we can help them. We're not afraid of regulation, because the regulation is actually there to protect consumers. It's what finance companies, it's how they interpret the regulation, add their protection layer on it, and then claim the regulator is hurting the consumer. We see that very, very differently. Yeah. So understanding what to commercialise when, and that they don't need to scale globally if you've got the right model.
Well, I think in fintech it's not typical to scale globally because of that regulation piece,
sure,
and because of the trust piece and having to grow, in some cases, a little bit kind of slower.
Yeah.
While you basically build the presence in market, it takes a little bit longer than, like average kind of website that you might be a SaaS product that's selling something for $10 a month or $5 a month. It's a bit different.
And I wonder how many fintechs, some of New Zealand's successful fintechs, went global or went international before they may have done, had they launched now. Like, we've got some amazingly powerful and successful fintechs here in New Zealand, Xero, Sharesies, Henry, that are paving the way for this next generation of fintechs coming through. But I wonder how many missed, those companies I just mentioned, they would not have trouble raising capital now. but how hard was it?
Have they started now, right?
Yeah, had they started now, or, you know, when they were trying to find their first 500,000, when they were finding their pre-seed, you know, how much easier would it have been? And anyway, and so that's our thesis. So is that we appreciate it's underserved. Marty and I, so the partner of the New Zealand Fintech Fund, we were angel investing in a lot of these companies ourselves and helping them out. And it wasn't until we sort of crossed paths and realised, and we started lobbying, trying to find these other people to launch this fintech fund, and realised after a while that no one's, maybe it has to be us.
Yeah.
And so we took that from an opportunity for someone else and turned it into a responsibility that we have for the New Zealand fintech ecosystem.
It's a really interesting mindset, like the responsibility of, because that carries some weight with it, right? Yeah,
for sure. And, you know, I think that's how we at Points, that's language we use. You know, we have a responsibility. The language we use a lot is we serve, you know, so we serve a business, or how we look at business is probably quite unique. You know, it's a company of diverse skill sets, experiences, and histories. And when you get that company of people together to generate commercial value by making your customers' lives easier, that's going to grow and expand. And then I think if you can come up with that common purpose or that common vision or goal, now it's not around working for me, now it's serving a purpose. And then I think if all of those different skill sets and experiences can serve a common goal, you're going to grow and grow very quickly.
Have you found with the 7 businesses that you're serving? Are there
for the Fintech Fund?
Yeah. Are there any commonalities around the challenges that they're facing?
Well, yes, they all needed capital. I suppose that's what probably put them into our room. They don't at the moment. I think there's, for an early stage company, I think it's around finding that path, and it's around finding, you know, what's that trigger event, or what's that thing that's actually going to gain traction and grow in value, you know, that most people would call finding product market fit. You know, and that ability to keep searching until something gains traction and your flywheel starts rolling. And I think a lot of them will know that there is something there. You know, not all of them are brand new. So our most recent investment was Emerge. So Emerge started as Square One, something that we supported very early days. And Jamie and Jovan have really taken this approach, seen an underserved market with SME, banking for small businesses. So they found product market fit. Now they're just about finding, right, what's the right product roadmap to go after? How do we commercialize that? How do we use our cash effectively in the current regulatory environment? You know, versus something like Blocks, who Chris and Cliff are going after. You know, how do they make that sort of first home ownership really, really accessible? And again, they know that there's a problem. They know they can have product market fit. Now it's around finding those first 5-10 customers, that first property. And so we're just, I suppose what we're offering for everyone there is we're available. This is our skill set. Call us when you need us. And every company needs something a little bit different.
Yeah. So we've interviewed quite a few people now, and so one thing that does pop up is that resilience piece.
Yep.
So how do you support the people that you work with in terms of resilience? Is it something that you have conversations around, or it's kind of just under the radar and just happens kind of off the cuff kind of thing?
It's definitely a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
So everyone, I think, everyone has a different resilience baseline. And one of the things I used to do very early on was you would see the train accident about to happen.
Yeah.
And I, as an altruist, as someone who wants to serve other people, I would think my responsibility was to save them. And what I've come to realise is I can't save everyone, and people have got to want to be, quote unquote, saved. So I think it's around knowing when to offer advice versus when to help pick the pieces up. resilience to me comes from people finding their limit and then testing it, either testing it too much or testing it a little bit. And if you are going to be a business owner, whether that's an early stage tech business or a more traditional business, you're going to find that limit. And then, so it's around knowing, going in eyes wide open. You need to, if you don't want to test your resilience, please get a job, right? But if you are comfortable about testing that resilience, you want to go after it. And then as a coach, it's more around knowing where is that limit, how do you provide that service, how do you provide that support. I suppose the first thing is making sure that everyone knows that you're there. And then it's sometimes it's just about listening, sometimes it is about coaching, sometimes it is about telling.
So what are you doing in your personal life to help you grow wealth at the moment?
So I do a few things. I suppose there was a catalyst moment when I was working at Lion where I overworked. I had a side hustle. I was doing way too many things, way too fast. And I had a physical breakdown. So I woke up one morning, I was a boxer, I was boxing, woke up early to go training and fainted, had the bath on the way down. And what had happened was I had lost my immunity, gotten a series of viruses. And that's when I realised I had to take my health quite seriously. So since then, balance is key. And it's not just around eating well or moving, but it's also learning, connecting with people, being able to unplug. So that's a big thing. So I am the husband to a beautiful lady who looks after horses. So Hayley runs our horse farm, or her horse farm. Yeah. So we've got 65 acres out at Muriwai.
Oh, wow.
And we've got two children, Irish twins, a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. Hudson and McKenna. So that ability to be able to, all of the work and accolade and stuff that I do in the city does not fly in Muriwai. That ability to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because a foal is being born and, you're being called out to help. That to me, that's balance.
Yeah, cool. And so, is that something that you talk about with the companies that you work with?
Yeah.
The importance of it?
Yeah, yes, you do. But again, I need to appreciate, we all need to appreciate that they are on their journey. And it's about, not so much about what we know, it's about what they believe. And we are a supporting character in their movie. So, what do they need to hear at the time? What support do they need? And also, some people don't, want that balance. And I was the person before, I was married before I had children, before I had a health issue. I was that person. And I prided myself on being a high achiever. And other people might be their age and stage too. So.
Have you thought about what the next, 20 years from now, what would you like your place to look like, if that makes any sense? Yeah,
it does. I wanted to be retired at 35, and that never happened. I would get to it, My father retired at 70.
Yeah.
But he's still calling, can I do this? Can I do that? So, I totally agree. I haven't thought about it. I think the rise of the gig economy and, people having side hustles and people having multiple income streams, I think, retirement will be a spectrum rather than a binary choice.
A destination. It was culturally a destination, though. For the last couple of generations, it's like, hey, be kind of entrapped for 30 years and get to a point where you can stop.
Totally.
And then when you stop,
then what?
Then you did, what I've seen from, I guess, my grandparents was kind of disintegrated very quickly.
Yeah. So I think, it will definitely change. I can't see myself retiring. Absolutely. I think I could see myself definitely dialing down and serving differently. maybe to 4 hours a month or 4 hours a week. But my vision of retirement would be staying on the farm the entire time and taking a few phone calls a day.
Yeah.
And I think that comes back to, that concept of, that old adage, if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I don't think it's luck, because I've worked very, very hard to get it here, and it's been designed on purpose. But I love what I do, and that's by design, right? I've surrounded myself with people who are different than me, who inspire me, who, if I'm in a bad way, put a smile on my face just by being present. We're in a luxurious situation where we can choose our clients now. And that hasn't happened by accident. That has been 10 years in the making. And I think, and I do work that I'm proud of and that I stand by. So, because people with purpose and people with filled tanks, in my opinion, they're far more productive.
I agree.
And you've got to get the balance right, because you do have people that take the piss. But around, my goal is if I can find someone who is extraordinarily capable, enjoys what they do, and if what that superpower is can serve that purpose, it's give them a goal and get out of their way. So we've got a series of values. I didn't mean this to go into here, but you've taken it here. So one of our values at Point 16 is express your superpower. And so this concept that everyone has a superpower, especially if you work with us, but to have superpower means you've got kryptonite. And be proud of you, or not be proud of your, but don't be afraid, or don't dismiss your kryptonite, and share it, because provided I've done my job right and I've got this diverse allocation of people, and not just from typical experience, but all of those HBDIs and Logos assessments and Myers-Briggs and all the rest of it. Because typically, if a task needs to get done, one person in this group is going to love to do it.
HBDI, we do that.
You do that, yeah?
Yeah, in our team. We've done it.
Yeah, there's a couple of others that I do recommend as well that can give you a three-dimensional view of it. So Widget's another one. So Widget's wonder, ideation, discernment, galvanize, enabled, and tenacity. And it's effectively, if you're going to do a project, you're only ever good at two of them and you suck at two of them. So when you're building a project together, make sure you've got people who go that full spectrum, and don't have everyone work on the entirety of the project, work them in stages. So which is definitely something I would highly recommend you explore. And Logos is another one that we do, which uses a lot of artificial intelligence. You do a 45-minute survey and it feels like it's just read your soul. So at Point 16, we've got these things called, we call them our baseball cards. So you generate your own photo with AI, and then you have your HBDI and your, some of your assessments there. And then down the bottom, it's like, these are my strengths. Like, this is, I will drop what I'm doing for this type of work, but this is my kryptonite. Please
don't give it to me.
Please, no,
That's really cool.
If you want it done, not my way.
100%. Yeah, I will totally sit on this and avoid it for months.
Yeah.
So that's something that we do ourselves, and I think a couple of other companies have seen that sort of.
Yeah, we do. I like HBDI because it has the under stress element.
Very cool.
Your kind of skill set changes, and then the team around you, and then you better understand why things are happening, and obviously the dynamics of a stressful environment and peacetime and wartime kind of example.
Yeah, totally. The other thing I like about HBDI is that not everyone likes to be asked the same way. Yeah. You get a blue character and it's like, cut the shit, get to the point. Where's the data? Whereas if you've got someone a little bit more yellow, it's like, hey, just ask me how I am before you come on with your instruction.
I'm off the charts, yellow and blue.
Oh, you are? Wow. That is extremely rare.
Not grey and red.
No.
And
I have like this much green, and when it's under pressure, my green goes to 0.
Right, okay.
So I'm surrounded by planners. I'm a really fire angle.
Yeah, my blue goes up in stress.
Okay.
Yellow comes in a bit.
Yeah.
And then the red comes in a bit, and the green's basically pretty constant.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so it's so cool though. Yeah, and actually we came up with the idea of 4 pillars of investing.
Okay.
Based off HBDI.
Yeah, nice.
So the whole
So what, red investing and blue investing and...
Yeah, well, no, so blue is like, hey, and this is where our product's evolving right now. We're doing, moving into the financial well-being space, and we're now helping people work out what's their wealth like holistically, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, blue is what's the data, what's the situation, what's going on. Yellow is, of course, what does the future look like, and how do I obtain equity that then gains value over time? Red is conviction.
Nice. Okay.
So conviction is understanding and knowing.
So you have obviously worked with lots of different companies.
Yeah.
And it's a very broad question, which might make it difficult to answer. But if you had to give a piece of general advice to someone who's looking at taking their fintech company that they've started to the next level, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a really tough question, I think.
Well, you have to answer it.
Yeah. Okay, so what advice would I give to someone starting?
Yes.
It's a commitment. So find something that you're extraordinarily passionate about. And you're gonna be wrong.
Yeah.
Right. So I would approach every day like you're completely sold and convicted that this is the right thing to do. Like strong opinions, loosely held kind of thing. And you need that purpose and you need that drive, because in hindsight you're going to be wrong so many times. Being a business owner, especially today, is extraordinarily tough. The spotlight goes on the winners and the spotlight goes on the very few percentages of the big exits and the people, in the top 10 lists and all the rest of it. But being a general business owner, you've got to love that day. Because I think if you don't, if you're in it just for the money, go work on a trading floor, go work where you're dealing with money and margin every day. It's got to be more than that. Money's the outcome, not the driver. Because that purpose, that why, that's going to get you through so many dark winters. It's going to get you through so many bear cycles. It's going to, if you need to raise capital or you need to talk to a bank, you're going to have to be extraordinarily naive to all of the unsolicited feedback they're going to give you, right? And some of it's going to be wise and some of it's not, because you're just going to get their perception of your situation as it is right now. So, do something you believe firmly, and attack it every day. But I suppose, huge conviction, loosely held. And get advice. And the reason why I suppose get a coach.
Yeah.
do it with someone else. I think the reason why I suppose there's not one piece of advice is because there's so many things that you're going to learn along the way, and so you will pick it up. So it's around finding that thing that's going to navigate those peaks and troughs. Family members are going to tell you you're crazy. Your mates are going to say they're never going to see you again. It's weird where you get the resilience test from. And it's funny,
Resistance. Have you heard of resistance?
I haven't, no.
Have you read The War of Art?
No, I haven't. I've heard about this.
Do it, yeah. So it talks about resistance in that case.
Okay.
And resistance is... now, it's interesting. It's from a Christian guy, but he doesn't write it from a Christian perspective, but it seems to me that it is a derivative of what he would perceive as the devil, I guess. But he explains it in a non-Christian way, which basically is that resistance is basically stopping you from fulfilling your work and your purpose.
Yep.
And resistance comes from interesting places. So when you're on the edge of a breakthrough, certain things will go wrong, and people will start to doubt and create create doubt in your mind, because they're closest to you, and that's obviously the best place for what he calls resistance to kind of infiltrate your life. Yeah. Which
that's fascinating.
Tests your resilience, but
and that's really okay. Now I'm gonna go into that book. But I've heard of it because yes, the poem, The Art of War. That sounds good. But and I think knowing there's adversity that helps you and adversity that hurts you. And there's lots of things like that as well, right? Like there's resources that helps you or hurts you. There's I've just been spending a bit of time with the Money Sweet Spot team, and so they talk a lot about lending that hurts you versus lending that helps you. And it's fundamental, and it can look very similar from the outside, but on the inside, it's dramatically different. And there is some resistance that will help you. If you want to be a bodybuilder, you've got to really work those muscles. You've actually, use resistance to damage your muscles to grow stronger. And for an entrepreneur of any size, whether or not you want to be turning over 200K a year or 200 million a year, you're going to meet resistance. You're going to need to have good constructive resistance, versus resistance that is going to hurt you or distract you or not be very...
In the context of the book, it is much around distraction.
Okay.
Yeah, it is often kind of that scene, because his whole thing there is like around doing the work. I don't care if the work's any good, I go in and do the input kind of approach, and then the resistance is there because he's a writer. So I guess from his perspective, that's his work, is sitting down and writing.
Well, especially if you can build it into a paradigm or use it in a way that can tell, so we talk a lot about this when we build strategies for companies. So a really good strategy, the litmus test on a really good strategy should be able to take something and it will define whether it's an opportunity or a distraction.
Okay.
And I suppose, and I'm keen to read this book now to understand a little bit more of the nuances to it. But yeah, there are really bad distractions that look like really good opportunities.
Right.
And if you don't have that catalyst, in Point 16 we would call that a business strategy, but if you don't have a mantra or set of values or something that you can use as a tester to go, is this an opportunity or a distraction? A really good example, like what we talked about just before with Fintech Fund, is can we help them with our connections and can we help them with our capability? Because it might look like an amazing opportunity, but a distraction for someone else, an opportunity for someone else, but a distraction for us. And so I think making sure that people have, you have those mantras, you have, what is your definition of good versus evil from a faith point of view? Because then can you use those litmus tests to call them early? We've got a business in SLF called PEP, which stands for the Personal Efficiency Program. Because this whole concept around, we're all taught how to do a job, but we were never ever taught just how to work. So PEP has these 12 principles taught over 2 days where you're taught how to work really well.
Okay.
And there's a whole module on distraction, and you can feel productive, but you've probably been distracted.
Well, and as an entrepreneur as well, sometimes you can work the discomfort away. You know?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, you've been punched in the stomach and slapped in the head, and now I just need to go and do some work. But it's interesting because it does help actually, because I do find that just trudging through the mud is actually the best way to get through anything, in a sense. But there's a balance, I think, that you kind of alluded to earlier with like your lifestyle and stuff, and kind of sometimes I guess
what literal mud.
Kind of. Also metaphorically, but I guess that distraction piece is sometimes working can be a distraction.
So if you're early in your business journey and you get the attention of a big box retailer or a massive company, so a large bank wants to partner with you and their distribution, millions, not tens or single thousands, and same with a big box retailer like a supermarket or a Mitre 10. And if you're early in your journey, and they're like, hey, we're interested in you, that sounds and looks and appears like the biggest opportunity. But based on margin, based on how your business is geared to supply that distribution, it could be the worst distraction. And so knowing, and I think maybe having people you can talk to figure that out. And that so year 2 of building a business and getting really good at what you're doing, and your customer profile is very specific, but then someone comes out, like a large business comes out and goes, "You're awesome, we want to expose you to 1 million people." I've hit the jackpot. Whereas that same opportunity at year 6 might be the best opportunity that you can leverage and really, really benefit from, versus at year 2, and you start redesigning your entire business around one customer, and it gets stuck in their legal or risk team or whatever, and it might not even hit the shelves.
Yeah,
or your margin's so skinny, because you've traded it for volume. So I'm not saying it's always a distributor. I'm not, and this is not a blanket statement. So if you're year 2, don't talk to a big distributor. Not at all. But I am saying, make sure you do have a catalyst, and make sure that, I suppose, just like the devil, it can appear like an angel. I really want to read this book.
Yeah, I was going to respond to that piece. Just around, I think, you better know the machine works. Rather than, because sometimes we don't know the machine is working. We have some stories and some hints of success and hints of product market fit that we are cultivating in the early stages.
And you might have solution bias.
Totally. And you're really in the early stages before product market fit. You have to be liberal enough to move, because until the machine properly works, and I'm thinking kind of almost dollar in, dollar out kind of situation. Like, you should be building your business from an operational perspective so that it is a machine that just churns out productivity of some description, which is the end outcome of whatever service or product you're delivering. And around that distribution piece, it's, well, if the machine's working, distribution's like not easy, but if I can get a distribution stream, it's fine as long as I don't have to change the machine.
That's right. Yeah, that's when the flywheel starts kicking in and doing its job, rather than restarting a flow or rebuilding a machine.
Yeah.
You're bang on. I think also, like, we work with companies from startups to banks, and from a SME point of view, our sweet spot's that sort of 2 to 50 million revenue. So it's hard to give generic advice to all of them. But, so in early stage, I would always say it's faith over fact, right? Because you're creating it. So, I would never look at opportunity distraction from an efficiency point of view. And exactly what you said, like, you can be more liberal and you can try more things, but you need to back your faith, right? Because it may be right, it may be wrong, but it's your faith that you've got to back. And then once you've got some facts, once you've got some data, once you've got that flywheel going, and to your point, once the machine can feed it, then probably start bringing in your blue people a little bit more, and start
blue and green,
start bringing those facts in.
We just got a really good green in.
Oh, nice.
So I'm really happy about that. Second week this week, and it's amazing, right? You're like, 1 week and you've already done all this green stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
You guys got a big day, right?
Yeah.
Smashing through a few of them, right?
No, we really love these conversations, and really appreciate it.
No worries. I hope you guys got some value out of it.
Totally, I think the audience will love some things you said.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much.
Have a lovely day.